What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Camps are finally starting up now, so every Saturday from this point on, we're going to take a look back at the previous week over all the important news that you should know about. This week's is probably the lamest because we only have like 2 days of camp to go off, but even still, there is plenty for us to talk about. So sit back, hit the like button. Let's start things off in Baltimore, where Rashod Bateman is getting his usual camp hype. He's been a standout so far, as we've been told, apparently looking like their top wide receiver. As I said earlier in the summer when he was also getting hyped, remember he was going pretty late in drafts. He got hyped up to like the 160 range or so on Underdog. Then the hype kind of died down. He's going back to 170. I would assume this hype going to bring him back to 160, maybe into the 150s. As I said before, he's got to prove it to me for a long time. Like, we get hype every single summer from Rashod Bateman. Like, unless he can prove to me for a prolonged stretch, all summer he can look at their top wide receiver, which I don't think is going to happen, I'm just not going to adjust my ranking. So his ADP is going to fluctuate based off of that. He is still the same in my eyes, a late round flyer that is much better on Underdog, because in redraft leagues, I just don't see a world where he's going to be a consistent player for you unless you're in like a 14 team, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex league, then sure. But again, I got to see the hype a little bit longer. I'm not adjusting any rankings. Someone who the hype I am believing is Diontae Johnson. We have Dave Canales, who I love. I've said many times, I think he is a phenomenal coach. Basically confirmed that they are building this offense around Diontae Johnson. Diontae remains, in my opinion, the best pick you can make, or at least the top 3 best pick you can make in drafts right now. There are very few players who are better at getting open, and he's going to be featured. Like, that is just such a great combination. When you've got an incredible offensive coordinator, when you are super good at just getting open on your own, and now you're going to be schemed open as well, and we're going to focus the entire offense around you, and you can get that player in round like 7 or 8. I have finished 84 drafts so far. He is my most roster player, highest confidence pick so far this season. I would be shocked if his ADP doesn't go up, but until it does, you need to be acquiring shares of him on Underdog. Fantasy doesn't always need to be super hard. If you've got elite players in line for a billion targets, draft them, especially when they go in the later rounds. We are getting mixed reports about my other love, Dalton Kincaid. This one I'm just kind of throwing out because it's like, again, we've got beat reporters going to the exact same practices, looking at a very small sample, right? Because sometimes you can be like, oh, beat reporter, like I was talking about last week, I'm talking about this week. Like, looking at the same like 1 or 2 practices, you've got one beat reporter saying, it might be like an uphill battle for Kincaid to clearly be the starter over Knox, and that, it's kind of been a little bit early for people to crown him as the number 1. But then you've got other beat reporters saying that he's been their most impressive pass catcher, that he's the clear number 1 option in the passing game, that he easily led the team in receiving touchdowns in red zone work, not even mentioning Dalton Kincaid as someone who caught a touchdown. Like, we are still in the early days of camp, and we've got people who are sitting there watching the exact same thing, and they can't make up their mind what they're seeing. So all I know is this. Shakir's a slot wide receiver. He's not going to command a ton of targets. Keon Coleman, I think, is miscast as an X receiver. I think it's going to take him some time to develop into that role. Dawson Knox, good, but never been someone who's commanded a high target share. So we're really set up for Dalton Kincaid and Curtis Samuel. Those are the 2 players that I think are the best pass catchers on this team, that are the target earners, or the players they will scheme looks to. I think those 2 are the ones you should be mostly targeting in drafts, and I am very optimistic about the ceiling for Dalton Kincaid this season, especially in full PPR leagues, but even in half PPR, I think the touchdowns go up, targets go up. I think he's got a really strong floor and ceiling this season. I, again, am remaining very optimistic. One situation where I have no idea what to think is with this whole Javonte Williams situation. So maybe like 5 days, a week ago, something like that, the report comes out, and it's not even a report. It's honestly just like a beat writer just like saying things on his mind. Beat reporter was like, I think he is a cut candidate. Sleeper tweets that out. That kind of goes viral. We see his ADP drop, probably for no reason, because this is just a speculation off one beat reporter. And honestly, it seems kind of unlikely as well, but again, it was speculated by a beat reporter. Then we hear, as camp opens, that he is the first in line for reps in every single drill. So that pretty much contradicts that, because if they actually are planning on cutting him, I don't think he can be first in line for reps every time. Here's my take on the situation. I don't think they're going to keep all of Javonte Williams, McLaughlin, Estime, and Pirine. They can. I just don't think that they will. In my opinion, Pirine makes the most sense for them to cut. And so I think they're going to roll with Williams, McLaughlin, and Estime, with Estime pretty much only getting early down work, Javonte Williams and McLaughlin mixing in both early downs and passing downs, but with Javonte's split being a little bit more heavily favored on early downs, McLaughlin's split a little bit more on, actually a lot more on passing downs, and there is upside. I've probably overlooked McLaughlin a little too much this offseason. There is upside there, especially if Pirine's the one that gets cut. Pirine had a ton of receptions last season. Like, McLaughlin could be in line for a lot of receptions this season. But one scenario I could see if people really think Javonte is not going to be on the team is maybe he's traded away, because it'd be kind of weird for them to cut him. He's still pretty young. He's more removed from his big injury. Like, he's still a good player. He's someone that we've loved in the past. I just don't know if he's Sean Payton's guy. Like, I just don't know if Sean Payton loves him. So if we kind of work through the summer, they're not going to cut him. They're going to trade him. So if he gets traded to someone like Dallas, the Chargers, obviously that's like wheels up for Javonte Williams, and we'd be all over that. So I don't think he's like a bad pick right now, because either he gets traded to a situation like that, or maybe he just stays on the team and he's the number one. But I think that's a possibility. I just think until we get like actual rumors from teams being like, oh, they've actually had discussions about trading him, or they're talking about cutting him, until that happens, I wouldn't really trust any sort of beat reporter saying, oh, like, I'm speculating he could get cut. The main issue you should have is more that it's Denver, right? They have the second lowest projected points per game total this season, only ahead of New England. That should be your major concern, being like, oh, what if they're just a terrible offense and they don't get going? Estime remains my favorite. I've drafted him, and I think I checked the other day, it's like maybe like 14 to 15% of Underdog drafts. So I've taken him a lot. But again, that's on Underdog, where I can get him in like the 17th or the 18th round. In a redraft league, you probably don't even need to go there. I would say like McLaughlin would probably be my favorite. In a redraft league, Underdog, I think he's perfectly priced, but redraft league, I would say my favorite is probably McLaughlin, because he's pretty much a lock to make the roster, and he'd be the one they'd use more in the receiving game. So I would just think he has a decent amount of upside. Like, if you think back to Sean Payton when he was on the Saints, he would use McLaughlin like Kamara, right? And he'd use one of Estime or Williams, or a combination of the two, like Ingram. And so I still like Estime super late on Underdog, but in redraft, you likely don't need to go there. And then Javonte Williams, there's just a lot of unknowns. Again, he could be nothing this season. He could be their number one running back and score a lot of points. There's just a lot of variance there. I don't typically draft him, but if you thought he stays, go for it. I just think situation to watch, for sure. Watch the reports out of Denver on this running back situation, because Sean Payton running back cores are very productive in fantasy historically. Sticking with running back, Kendre Miller is already hurt, and his coach is not pleased. So Dennis Allen said, that's a player who needs to figure out how to stay healthy, because he can't make the team in the training room. Big oof. Like, he's calling him out, being like, dude, you're not going to make the team if you are hurt every single day. Remember, he was hurt all of last season. He played like 2 games. He had like absolutely no snaps last season. Looked okay at times. Was a prospect that I wouldn't say my model was in love with, but my model liked him, being like, hey, he has upside in fantasy if he can get going. Has not gotten going. He's got to stay healthy. I've been behind him in ADP recently. I checked the other day, and I'm about a round behind ADP. But I also have a note in there to drop him even further. I think after hearing this news, people are going to definitely jump ship on Kendre Miller. My guess is that it also increases Kamara's ADP by about half a round. That's probably what I'll do in the rankings, is I'm going to give a little bit more workload to Alvin Kamara, and then kind of bump down Kendre Miller to a point where you're not really getting him unless you really want to force him on your team. If we start, he comes back healthy, we start getting good news. Like, the idea of Kendre Miller is really just that, like, he can win the early down job, because they're not going to give Alvin Kamara, 350 touches. Like, they still have touches to go around. If he could have won that early down role, maybe get some of that goal line role, he could be productive in fantasy given where you were drafting him. I just think at this point, Kamara's the guy there. He's probably a relatively decent value in drafts right now. But then Taysom Hill. I think the bigger issue is that, like, Taysom Hill is going to be brought in near the goal line. If you are in a league where Taysom Hill can be a tight end, he's a really strong pick, because not only is he going to play traditional tight end, he'll probably mix in as a quarterback as well. He's going to get a lot of carries. He's going to have an early down role, but especially when they get into the red zone, he's going to have some of those goal line work. And I think that's also what pushes me off of Kendre. If Taysom Hill wasn't there and they didn't love him, it would just Kamara, I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, even with this news, I feel like Kendre could still do something. With Taysom there as well, it just leans towards me being like, why? Like, I don't know. I think there are better picks in that range than Kendre Miller, so I'm not drafting him anymore. MarShawn Lloyd also has an injury. It's a hip injury. He has not been out there in camp so far, but again, camp's just open, so I'm not saying he's missed like a month with this injury. He's just out right now. I don't know when he's going to come back. They have not set a timetable for his recovery. It doesn't seem major, but again, we have absolutely no idea. Josh Jacobs is still my second most rostered running back behind Derrick Henry this season. The community has been very quick to crown Lloyd as the next Aaron Jones before even seeing him show up to camp. That's a big reason why I've been in on Josh Jacobs, just being like, listen, I like MarShawn Lloyd, right? I think he can be a good player. I think he's a great prospect. I think they like him a lot. I think he'll have a role this season, right? I think all that's going to happen, but it's like, I think it. And I think the entire community has been like, no, that's going to happen. He's going to be the next Aaron Jones. He's going to be featured. He's going to kick off Josh Jacobs. And that is not a lock to happen, right? Right now, you look at Jacobs on Underdog specifically, he's going outside the top 50 players. I mean, if he has the role that we kind of think he could have this season, and the Packers are as good as we think, he could be a top 3 running back. That is league winning upside. That is tournament winning upside. That is $1 million upside on Underdog. When you can get someone that late that has a very clear path to a featured role on one of the best teams in football, that is league winning upside. Now, again, I think Lloyd is talented. This is not me saying do not draft Lloyd late, because I think Lloyd is also a solid pick late. Wouldn't probably draft him on the same team, but Lloyd is a solid pick late if you miss out on him and you want to bet that he can have the Aaron Jones role. But please remember, Jacobs had over 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns 2 years ago. He's going to be 26 all season. He's not cooked. He's not old. He could easily be a league winner this season. I'd be loading up on Diontae Johnson and Josh Jacobs. If that's like 2 things I can say you're going to a draft hyper-focusing on. You never want to just be like, oh, I'm definitely drafting this player. But there's a lot of different draft positions where you could easily get Jacobs and Diontae Johnson. Those would be 2 I would heavily be going after at their ADP right now. And if you're like, Nick, I would love to, but my league doesn't draft until August, and I can guarantee you both their ADPs are going to be higher by then. Well, today's your lucky day. Not only can you join an Underdog draft at any time for as low as $3 for a league, if you sign up today using promo code FFA, they will not only give you a 50% deposit bonus on whatever you put in up to $250, but you'll also get my Underdog rankings and my redraft rankings for free. That's going to help you a ton for both the Underdog drafts right now and then your redraft draft when you get there in August. In my opinion, Underdog is peak fantasy. If you have not tried it out yet, I do not know what you are waiting for. I promise you're going to love it. All right, next bit of news. CeeDee Lamb officially holding out. I would not worry about this. They are going to pay him. There's no outcome here where CeeDee Lamb does not get paid by Dallas Cowboys. I would be shocked if they took this up to the regular season. They know they're going to pay him. Just get it over with. Go through camp. Your offense is nothing without CeeDee Lamb. So they're going to get the deal done. If we hit August 20th and he's still holding out and they still haven't paid him and it doesn't look imminent, sure, because then he's missed a lot of camp, and now we have more of those concerns about, starting slow, having the injuries, things like that, to where maybe he's a better trade candidate than draft candidate. But until that happens, we've got like a month until that. Draft him exactly where you were before. Assume that he's going to get a deal done, because again, I'd be shocked if they didn't. Saquon is apparently having more receptions than anyone in their opening practice of camp. That is just camp hype. He's obviously not going to be the most targeted player on this team. It's going to be, one of Devonta Smith or AJ Brown, but those 2 are obviously going to be significantly more targeted than Saquon Barkley. What I want to point out with this is that they paid Saquon a ton of money. Saquon is still an elite player. This is an elite offense, and he's going to be featured. Historically, we would have Saquon Barkley as a top 5 pick. If you look back 5 years ago, in every format, Saquon would be going off the board in the top 5 picks. But with how aggressively people are drafting wide receiver this season, his average ADP across the injury and redraft leagues is 13th overall. So you're getting him at the round 1-2 turn in a 12-team league. You're getting him into the second round in a 10-team league. Only platform where he is ranked inside the top 10 picks is CBS. I guess nice job, CBS. But he's a great pick. And he really does help out because, people have asked me all the time, like, what's the best pick in drafts right now? And I've kind of said, like, top 8 typically, because I do think there's, like, an 8 best players this season. And then we get a little bit of a drop off after that. And it's kind of tough being, like, 9, 10 if no one follows you, because then you're first to take, a player that's basically the same as players going, 7, 8 spots after that. I think, like, theoretically, if you could get, like, a 7 or an 8 pick, and also get, it depends on your league size again, but also get someone like Saquon or JT in round 2. Again, historically, you are not able to start off with something that dominant. It's just people are really aggressive at wide receiver this season. It is a year, though, where maybe it turns out that mid and late picks work out a little bit more because of what great value you're getting at the running back position. Because it's not only those two. Like, Gibbs going later there is a great pick. But, like, also, again, McCaffrey, Bijan, Breece Hall are also very, very good picks. Those are the top 3. But, like, Gibbs, Saquon, and JT are super, super strong picks this season. I think all of them are going to have fantastic seasons, and they're going later than they would historically. So it does give credence to, like, later first-round pick maybe being a little bit more viable this season. But if you made me choose, I don't know. I still think I'd want, like, an earlier, maybe like a mid pick this season if you can lock up one of, like, Breece Hall or Bijan and then get a sick wide receiver in round 2. Or who knows, maybe one of these, again, you're at that like 6, 7, 8 pick, and maybe you get one of those 2, but then also one of these running backs falls to the next pick, and you're like, sounds good. I'll take those 2. I'll draft a million wide receivers after that. Just, there's a lot of strategy this season that's a little bit different in the past. Again, all these running backs are awesome picks. Polk, next player we'll talk about. Beat reporter saying he's a clear top option in the passing game. I would kind of hope so. I don't know. Like, what did people think was going to happen? They took him early in the second round. They had that pick headlined for their wide receiver, right? They were trying to trade that pick. They were trying to get Brandon Ayuk with that pick. That didn't end up working out. They knew they were going to take a wide receiver with this pick. They took him earlier than people thought he would go, but he was still a high-end prospect. What did you think? What did you think was going to happen? Like, Demario Douglas is good. I love Pop Douglas. Like, you guys know I'm a New England fan. Of course I like him. He's a good pick. He's a good player. He's not going to be a number 1. He's a slot receiver. They can put him, into like flanker at times. He's not an X receiver. He's not someone you center your offense around. I know he was good last season. Look at the underlying metrics. He's a good wide receiver. He's not an elite wide receiver. Not going to be an elite featured wide receiver. He's going to be their number 2. But Polk is going to be their number 1. They're going to move him around the formation, screen passes, deep looks. He is the 71st wide receiver off board right now. If you look across the industry, around like all redraft, underdog, everything, you average all together, 71st wide receiver off boards. He is a number 1 wide receiver on a team. I know it's New England. I know they have the hardest schedule in the league. They have a rookie quarterback. They have the lowest projected points per game in the season. I know they're bad. Trust me. I know. But that just means they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And if they center their offense around this kid and they throw the ball a ton and you get him to late 15th round, I don't know. I just feel like that makes him a pretty strong pick. We're getting a lot of hype from Kansas City as well. Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice apparently looking great to open camp. Tony's been getting snaps in the backfield. Nothing on Xavier Worthy because he has strep throat, but he'll be in there. I'm sure he'll get some hype as well. Please do not get sucked into the Tony hype. I'm done with him. Like, if he couldn't succeed in some of the situations he's had in the past, and especially since joining Kansas City, I don't know. He'll maybe be gadget player. I don't know if he's going to make the team at all. I don't know if him or Sky Moore would make the team. But if he does, gadget player, we're not touching him, especially in a redraft league. But I am standing behind the take that Marquise Brown can be a league winner this season. Honestly, throw Mahomes in that bucket as well. Like, I know Mahomes doesn't go late enough to, like, truly be a league winner, but we went over last season how Allen and Hurts were league winners, even though they were drafted like 2nd and 3rd by ADP. It depended on the platform when you were drafting, but like they were still drafted early, but because of how much they separated from the field, in like a bad year, of course, for quarterback scoring, they were still quote unquote league winners. Like, they were players among like the top 20 players and like getting you into the playoffs, winning championships. They were very important in doing that. I think Mahomes could throw for 5,500 yards and 50 touchdowns this season. I think that's in his range of outcomes given, the new cast of players. And when we think about, what's in people's mind, it's always what we had last season. What people always just defer to what we saw most recently. They were 14th in points per game last season, Kansas State. But since 2017, they've been 7th, 1st, 2nd, 6th, 4th, and 1st. And then 14th last season. They're probably going to be a top 5 offense this season. They now have 2 potential deep threats. Again, I think it's Marquise Brown. Worthy technically didn't actually grade out well as a deep threat in college, but great coaching, great quarterback. They're going to scheme him open. He'll end up being a good deep threat on Kansas City. When you have Marquise Brown as a great deep threat, you've got the fastest wide receiver in NFL history. You still have Kelce. I know he's regressed as a player, but like he's still Travis Kelce. He's still inarguably like a top 3 wide or tight end in the league. And if he was a wide receiver, he'd be one of the top ones as well. They're a great team. I think Mahomes could easily be the quarterback 1 this season. And you're getting him, consistently, round 4? I've seen him drop to round 5. Like, I would be targeting Kansas City. I'd make it a point in your draft to leave with one of them. I don't care who you leave with. The ones I've left draft with the most is Mahomes, Pacheco, and Hollywood. I think those are the 3 I like the most this season. But if you want to draft Kelce, you want to take a shot on Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy, totally fine with that. I truly would, every single league that you're in, I'd try and leave with at least one Kansas City player because I really think people are kind of like underrating them given what we saw last season. They're going to be a lot better than last season. We have again been told by the Titans head coach that they view Pollard and Spears interchangeably. They have said this all offseason since the moment they signed Tony Pollard, that they view them interchangeably, that they don't have a clear starter. There's no 1A, 1B. It's 2 players, right? He said, I am not concerned about naming a starter. They're both going to play a lot. Neither one is a starter. Neither one is a backup and will play the hot hand at times. As I've said before, I think Spears is just better than Tony Pollard, and I would much rather wait an extra round past Pollard's ADP and draft Spears again a round later by ADP. And if their ADP changed and they were going at the exact same spot, I would still take Tyjae Spears. So that is the latest news out of camp. If anything happened the day I'm recording, day after, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it during the mock draft Monday, during the live stream on Tuesday, or if we can't get to it by then, next Saturday's video. Again, every single Saturday, we're going to go back at the previous week, talk about all the news that's been happening in camp, at least all the important news. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of this free content. So I'll be back again tomorrow with another video. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Like if you watched this far, subscribe if you are new here. Thanks for watching.